Coming to you live, it's the Auto Hub Show with Ian and Jeff. Here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
I was at Larry Foman's seminar. So happy I came, having such a good time. Thank you so much, Larry.
One of the best trainers in this area for sure. I don't know about anywhere else, but as far as I know, he's the best. So,
told you it was wise.
Take advantage.
Thank you for having me here.
I'm at Larry Feldman's seminar, and what I found is that what he's really good at doing with his knowledge and with his training, he's not filling a bucket, he's lighting a fire.
Ways to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is the longer it takes, the more money you spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the recon process and to the front line. The average days in recon and then the time to line are the most important things that we look for. I'm Mike Burrell. I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
Doug, I just wanted to mention on your comment that we I couldn't say this with a straight face, I'm sorry. I was going to say, we try to avoid religion on this show with the sacred cows comment, but I agree with you completely, man. We're gonna be have a frank conversation. Well, speaking of cows, there will be no hot dogs. Right.
So I thought today, since we were talking a little bit about retention, I'd pull up a couple books. I don't know if these are good. I'm not 100% expert on this, but Managing Employee Turnover, Employee Retention Rules, and Retention Through Leadership. So go ahead, Jeff, with our disclaimer.
Well, as always, the Auto Hub Show is the views and opinions shared here today are those of our guests, not necessarily of us. And we are going to have a frank, no sacred cows conversation today about employee retention and how are we going to get back to the good old days of only 30% turnover in the variable operations.
So I pulled some data. There's two quotes, one from 2019 Cox Automotive Dealership Staffing Study, and it was about Gen Z and young millennials. More than 30% are interested in working in a dealership, even higher when roles and other sales are presented to them. There's a link there if you're interested in that study. It's from Cox Automotive. And then there was also another study that was referenced, which was from JM&A Group. And they said turnover rate in the automotive industry is 46. I think it was 46%, an all-time high. Level of turnover is unsustainable. Slow population growth and higher rates of retirement, among other factors. So how does that break out in terms of departments? They actually had some graphics here. So from 2016 to 2019, dealership-wide annual turnover increased 15%. Staff turnover, top concern for 25% of dealers. 20% of dealership staffs are likely to look for another job in the next 6 months. 1 of 3 non-management dealership employees do not feel engaged or excited about their jobs. And then this gives you some other stats. So 46% dealership-wide annual turnover. Annual turnover for service is 49%, and annual turnover for sales consultants was 80%. Now, we have heard numbers of 90% from women in auto on past shows as we've done some human resource shows, but those are the numbers I could find. If you're curious, you can download that information on JM&A's website. There's a detailed PDF on it. So that was the numbers I could dig up. If you're going to SEMA, I'm going to be there with my wife, and Larry's going to be there as well, I believe, with his wife. And then we're also going to be at Used Car Week in Scottsdale. Jeff and his wife, me and my wife are going to be there. I believe Larry's going to be at SodaCon in Baltimore. I can't make it, but I'm sure it'll be a fun event. And that's it. So let's get into it.
Well, perfect, everybody. This is our first advisory panel show. And how we're going to do this is we're going to introduce everybody here in a moment. And actually, we're going to welcome Joel Benson here as an honorary pitch hitter. And how we're going to structure it, Ian and I are just going to introduce the topic, introduce the people, and we're going to spend a few minutes talking about the issue.
Hey, if you miss us live, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcast. And
then we're going to go back, summarize, and see what recommendations we can do to actually fix it. And it's very funny because all of us have been in business a long time, and this has been a problem. And the stats that we showed, I looked at dealership like turnover 15%. Yeah, because some the techs generally tend to stay longer, parts people stay longer, et cetera, and sales has always been the turnover. And dealers, for some reason, variable ops tends to be their favorite point. Most dealers come from variable ops, or many do less now, and that's what they understand. Yet that's what they focus on, and that's why one of the reasons there's so much turnover. But so without further ado, I'll introduce. Then I'll call on you. Just introduce everybody first, and then I'll call on you for your opinion. First of all, we have our good friend Larry Feldman from Career Changers USA, and he's abandoned Canada now because he had some great success. He just abandoned us. Next, we have Doug Reese from A to Z. Get that right? Z. I did not say Z. Peter Smith from Z Lion Partnership, and Joel Benson, the fine gentleman from Big Calls. I have to tell you, I had a very interesting conversation with some of the car gurus the other day. That was because my little lot we use Big Calls, and I was talking about that. He said, "Look, you tried another?" I says, "Nah." So I got Ian sticking on our friends at Car Gurus. So if he gets a big one, Joel, you know what? Just carry it. So moving right along, Larry, what's your? Please tell us, your take on this. Just a short 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to time you, and just on this situation with turnover. You're on mute.
Is that 2 or 3 minutes in real time or car dealer time?
Yeah, that's 2 or 3 years in real time.
Because when a car dealer says this only takes a couple of minutes, that can sometimes be days. It's like, in the Bible when they said she had a child, she was 80, the time gets a bit of lasting. All kidding aside, obviously, I look askew on numbers about recruiting because I have a recruiting company and I like it when they need people. On the other hand, loving this industry, I would like to see less turnover. And I think I can correlate it to, if you don't mind me sharing, I have 3 core values that are the most important to me. And they are loyalty, sincerity, and consideration. And I truly believe that dealerships lack, if not one of these 3, all 3. The loyalty thing, if people don't feel you have their back, why the heck would they have your back? As far as sincerity, and this is not a knock on car dealerships, this is a knock on our planet we're currently living in. What people say and what they actually do has no correlation in most instances. And when it comes down to consideration, being considerate of people's feelings, their futures, or what they're thinking. If we just dial back to these simple, basic concepts, we'll be fine. Because if you think about it, Jeff, where else can you not have a college education, not have any food skills, or no craft, and still make $100,000? I don't think there's a lot of legal professions that can encapsulate like that. So to have that kind of turnover, it means not somebody's doing something wrong, everybody's doing something wrong. The people that are quitting or leaving don't grasp the opportunity they have. And management isn't making it clear to them how much they're valued as part of the team, what they bring to the team, what they can take from it. You know, you've been to a couple of my classes, and you know I love to use the dog analogy that when you point and you have a dog, he never looks in the direction you're pointing, he looks at your finger. So I think there's a lot of not focusing on the fact that it's an amazing career, that I don't care how smart of an owner or GM or GSM you are, you still need salespeople unless you want to leave the desk and run out there. So to not work together better, to not understand how symbiotic the relationship is, how much we need them, and you know, so on and so forth. By the way, one other thing, as far as being picked on this panel, I always kid around with you, but I'm kind of honored because you won't find three better guys than the guys on this panel. Doug Reeves is sharper than a tack. Peter Smith is so scary, positive, and motivated that we dragged him into our lethal weapons team. And if there's a better product than VidCalls to directly connect people, I haven't seen it. Joe, I haven't forgotten yet. I got so much going on here, and I've been so tied to my computer and refocused. But these three gentlemen are absolutely fabulous, and the two bald guys aren't bad guys.
Yes, I don't have my hat on to stop the reflection. I was just about to say, Doug. Oh, there we go. Yay! Next, we have Doug Reeves from A to Z Sync. Doug, just give us your opinion on how we, what this problem. How did we get here?
Yeah. I kind of, as I thought about it, there were 4 points that came up to me. The first is just the general image of the car salesperson. I think that in the past we've rewarded behavior. We focused on creating job descriptions that focused on selling, and it was all about results. And as a result, a lot of times they ended up hiring deceptive people to fill these roles, thinking that's what it's going to take to be successful. When really, instead of focusing on the customer experience, and as a result, these deceptive people started creating this image that now lives in the mind of everybody. They focused more, as I said, they focused more on the sale than the experience. And to kind of tie on what Larry said, the industry has done a poor job promoting this industry as a place where you can be successful, where regardless of your background, you can do well. So I think the first thing is the image that we've promoted. The second is the career pathing. There really isn't a career pathing within dealerships. Generally, we take the most deceptive, the most successful salesperson, move them up into management, and now he's just going to keep perpetuating this cycle as opposed to creating leaders that have a more holistic view. The third thing is I think dealerships in general have always devalued training and coaching. I mean, they put a line item on their financial statement, but they never use the money. They never do anything to develop people and really give them a career. They just offer them a job. And then the final thing is that I would say is that they focus on the wrong things. There's always this focus on past metrics, not on behaviors that drive the metrics. And when you lump all of that in, what you have is this image issue and a performance issue, and just not a long-term view.
Thank you. That's, what, it's a very interesting point. By the way, the line item for training is actually used for 20 groups or retreats. And I always get a laugh here. The New Car Dealers Association of BC has an annual meeting in the winter, and it's usually in Vegas or Palm Springs or somewhere else. So that's again where that training money goes to. I'm just kidding. Peter Smith, give us your opinion on this. Now, Peter, listen, we know you can go on and on and on. So go.
Okay, 1 o'clock. All right. So first of all, I want to reiterate how humbling it is to be chosen to be part of this board. The guys that we are sharing the screen with are experts, and their intelligence leads nothing to be known about the industry because they are the best. When I look at it, the very first thing that I look at retention is we don't operate as a business. We operate as car lots, and we operate. And as I say that, we operate on a 30-day cycle, not a annual or a business plan that we're looking at 3, 5, 10 years out. We always say we're a people business, but we're not. We don't care about people. If we cared about people, we would engage in what Doug's company is promoting is dealership experience, a global experience, not just customer experience. We got to get back into understanding what the people want, both inside and outside this industry. We have to respect, trust, and acting with an absolute integrity. Our actions will speak louder than our words, and we're known to use AI and everything else to make our words sound great lately. And we just have to really look at the three core values of the industry, which are people, process, and tech, and use them accordingly. Once we do that, we will see a change in that retention. When they say 80% in sales, I would say it's higher right now because of the actions that we've taken over the last 3 years. So Larry's going to be a very, very busy man in his recruitment company, and I'm working on other projects to bring this all to a business end. So,
yeah, thank you. Well, it's very funny too because putting together 3 comments, generalized from the comments so far, is that anybody from any background can come into where else can you make 6 figures? And the interesting part is I use this. I remember talking to Don Brady a while back. He opened up a little used car lot in Alliance, Ohio, and he bought a building, and it looks like about a quarter-acre lot for $60,000. My jaw dropped. Up here, that would be 60 grand a month rent, and he's opened up a little used car lot. So can you imagine in a place where real estate value is at that level, and you've got car salespeople making 100 grand a year? What a living! Realtors won't make that kind of money down there. They will in Toronto or Chicago or Florida somewhere, maybe Miami, here in Vancouver, but not in a place like that. Yet a car salesman does, and they have a grade 10 education. So the opportunity is there. The problem that we face right now, before I go to Joel, is right now, you can take somebody in grade 10 and just put them on the floor and they're going to sell cars. Unless they're in a Chrysler store or a Ford store, they're going to sell cars. Chrysler and Ford, you got to be a good salesperson now because they got inventory and competition. So that's a factor. Joe, what's your opinion? I know you're kind of new to the automotive end of the business, but what's your opinion? How do we get there? Why do we have such crazy turnover rate and you don't in so many other businesses?
You're muted.
Lower left-hand corner.
There we go.
When Ian first told me what the subject matter was going to be on this show, I had to be on it because I respect Larry, Peter, and Doug. I'm meeting for the first time, but I want to hear what the pros say. When Ian told me what the subject matter was, I look back on all the jobs that I've had in my career. I've had 14 of them, which means I've entered the job 14 times and I've left the job 14 times, usually on my own accord. But I tried to figure out what the incentives were besides money. I made a lot of money in many of our programs. So I'm here to learn more. I've had employees that work for my companies. I still have a company with employees. So I'm here to listen to what you guys have to say, what I'm going to tell you. So I'm going to listen. I'm going to be a good listener.
By the way, you have to point out, I think you're wearing a Roots Canada sweatshirt there.
It's cold, man. It's cold, like 58 degrees outside in Vermont.
Oh my God, 58 degrees. Ooh, that's cold.
I think a penguin may be behind you. Don't you call my wife a penguin?
Yeah,
It will get up to 75 today, but for right now, it's a little different.
So, it's an interesting problem, because this industry it's bizarre, and lately again with shortage of things, we've shared and heard stories everywhere of how customers get treated, and it seems that the car business, our biggest problem, actually may reflect on the fact of turnover. Is when the going gets good, we get cheap because we don't, nobody matters. Doug, I think you mentioned it, where they take that salesperson who might be deceptive or whatever, they make them a manager, or her, forgive me, but they aren't necessarily qualified to be a sales manager.
Right.
So therefore, what ends up happening is they do what they do best, is sell cars. So they reward them because they go in, they close deals, they slam a bunch of people together, right? And there is no team. There's just I who's closing them. And that's definitely a factor. Ian, what?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I had the opportunity on the weekend to watch a documentary series on Carlos Ghosn, the former CEO of Nissan and Renault. And it was really interesting because, it's controversial, but it was interesting because before he got the job at Renault, he actually worked for Goodyear and turned that company around. But what was most interesting in it, other than the stuff which I'm sure there's lots of opinions on, was the fact that the first thing he did in both those companies, whether it be Renault or Nissan, was he went in and he had to make what was broken work, which was the dollars and cents of the business. But what was interesting after he turned the companies around was he became heroes in both of those countries, despite the fact that he had to make tough decisions. But what was fascinating at the end of it was, at the end of the day, when he actually had turned around both these firms and there was talk about a merger of the two to make it one of the biggest auto companies on the planet, it really came down to people at both companies not being happy with how he was being compensated for what he'd done. So it was kind of interesting. I mean, there was definitely more to it than that. But in both those cultures, in both those countries, Japan and France, there's definitely a culture of, oh, you have a job for life. We don't fire people in these countries, even if the math doesn't work. But what surprises me in auto retail, to take it to the retail side, is if I've got a salesperson or a sales team that's delivering a great customer experience, delivering results, delivering revenue, even in tough times, when that person isn't delivering enough. So let's just say they're selling those 15 cars or 20 cars, and some months they're selling 10, which I think 6 to 8 is still the average in auto. To Peter's point, we're laying that person off. Whereas, we're not looking back into that, what revenue is generated over the last, say, 6 to 12 months. Like, there's ups and downs in any car business, especially around when you run out of inventory. But when you're looking at a representative that said, okay, they went from 15 to 10, oh, we want to get rid of that guy now because he only delivered 10, but you didn't look back to that, say, 6 months of time. And to me, that was kind of interesting. But what was the most interesting about the documentary was the fact that he was essentially running two companies simultaneously, which is not easy, especially in a turnover point of view. I'm not saying what he did was right, but it was interesting.
I don't mean to sound cynical,
yeah,
but I would disagree. And you're your friend, that the most interesting thing was running two companies simultaneously. I like the fact that they smuggled him out the trunk of the car to avoid extradition.
Oh yeah, you can't make this kind of stuff up. I mean, it was very interesting. But what was the most interesting was the way the Japanese look at legal. They look at the legal system completely opposite of every other country. Just like, we're going to throw you into a cell and then 99% of you are going to admit it. So that was kind of interesting. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying the guy's guilty or not guilty. I'm not a lawyer, but it was very interesting to see sort of how he took on those challenges in both countries. And in France, they're like, oh, you're not going to go do this. Like, these companies going to go bankrupt.
But Ian, I think you tapped on something lightly that I think that contributes to the issues that we're discussing today. Every dealership works in 30-day cycles. So they're only worried about what happened in the last 30 days. And then it's like, okay, then now let's react. What are we going to do and tweaking for the next 30 days, as opposed to looking at a longer term view. Dealerships it seems like the vast majority of dealerships don't have the patience or the stomach to take a long-term view. It's always, what have you done for me lately? What's happening right now? And I think that causes a lot of the issues that we have. And I know Peter, you feel that way. I mean, dealerships don't take a long-term view. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely, Doug. You and I have had many a discussion on the way that dealerships operate their pay plans. They don't look at longevity. They look at give me one second. They don't look at longevity. They look at immediate results, instantaneous gratification.
Right. I mean, and Larry, when you go in and train for stores, how do you address that from a long-term basis and get a dealer to just relax and calm down? Because they may not see the fruits of all of your hard labor immediately, but they've got to be patient and work with it. I mean, how do you address it, Larry?
You want to have a duality to your life. You want to be impatient in the sense that you don't want to let things pass you by, but you want to look at everything long term. Doug, I am proud to tell you that I averaged well over 30 cars a month. For many, many years, I wound up being number 2 in the country for Cadillac. It's not what I'm bragging about. I'm bragging about the fact that I never let them put a warranty through with $100 deductible. I said, are you out of your mind? I don't mind making money. But when the guy goes in, let it be a 0 deductible. I never put anybody in an 84-month finance. They pencil it. I come back and say, I'm not doing this. I don't want the guy to come back and fall in love with me and say 2.5, 3 years down the road, I'm ready. But you got to wait 3 more years. We don't think long term, because in this business, these people, just like it costs a fortune to replace people, a fortune in terms of not only paying a guy like people, what you lose in transition. Think about what we lose by not capturing our customers. We see it with fixed stops when we don't emphasize tires and oil change and keeping the people in-house. We lose the service business. They inevitably buy a car from someone else. But these people don't, unless it's the Unabomber, these people have family, friends, communities, houses of worship, sports teams, and to not emphasize, I don't just want to sell you. I want to sell everybody I ever met. Hey, Doug, you made me think of something. Let me tell a super quick story and I'll shut up because I think it'll dial into what we're talking about. I got put on the spot at a training class, I guess it was 2 years ago. And a guy stood up and didn't want to be in the class. Everybody else was laughing and learning. And he said, and I'll edit this out yet so you don't get in trouble. He said, quote, if you're so effing smart, what do you say to the guy that says, why should I buy from you instead of the other Chrysler dealer? Now, Doug, I had no idea the guy was going to ask me, but I love to think on my feet. I try to train people to think, not memorize cliches. So I said, tell him you're greedy. And the class started laughing. They figured I was having a breakdown. I said, well, don't laugh, play it out. I'll be the salesperson. He said, all right, why should I buy from you instead of the other Chrysler dealer? I said, because I'm greedy. And he said, that sounds like bull. I said, does it? I bet you're just like me and you bought something from somebody. It didn't have to be a car. Could have been a chair or a watch, a big screen TV. And they were your best friend to get your money. And then when you had a problem, you couldn't find it. I hate that, don't you? And he said, I do hate that. That guy wasn't greedy. All he wanted to do was sell you one car, or one chair, or one watch. I want to sell everybody you ever met in your life a vehicle. I'm going to be your personal concierge. You always want to buy from people who are greedy in the sense that they'll keep you happy. Now, this is the Gordon Gekko, greed is good, but think about it. If you keep people happy, the most altruistic thing you can do, you're still going to be rewarded financially because they're going to come back. And Doug, everybody on this show knows it's a whole lot easier to sell a repeater referral than it is to a stranger walking in with an ad. That's all.
I 100% agree. I mean, it was funny. I was talking to Joel on the weekend. Back when I sold cars, I got a business card. At that point, I had a home number. So I had my cell number, my office number, my home number.
I just got a message, and from a Doug, he has quit his current job, so he's up to 15 now. The perfect guy to have in a work.
So the funny thing about this, when I put the home number on there, is people are like, oh, people are going to call you at home. I said, I don't care. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I want to be easy to reach. And the funny thing about it is, and I sold cars for 10 years, retail. Very rarely did I ever get a phone call. And I fast forward 15 years now, I guess, or 13 years. I've had my phone number, my LinkedIn profile, probably since 2005. I can count on one hand the people that have called me. And people call me and they're like, they can't believe it's the real phone number. I'm like, well, it's been there since 2005, but people don't believe it. But you never want to be difficult to reach. And I want to tell a really brief story that I was at a record store back when records were hot in the past in Baltimore, Maryland, when I lived there. And I went to the checkout. I was buying a record, and there was a big sign behind the checkout of a list of all the different forms of payment the guy took, like Diners Club and cards I'd never even heard of. And I said, "What? Like, what's the deal with this?" He goes, "Never make it difficult for people to pay." And then fast forward today, I think on the weekend, I was at a place. Oh no, we don't take Amex. Really? You're not going to take someone's money who uses that card? Like, why? It's just really funny. Anyway, Jeff, go ahead.
Well, it's funny, we're talking about tiny thinking,
Right.
I mean, it's literally a restaurant that will charge you $5 if you use a credit card below $15 or something like that. And if you think about it, the highest charge I've ever seen on a credit card is 5%. So why would you really care about 5% on a $10 charge? If we do small thinking, right now we're suffering from this in the business. Please tell me anybody if you disagree. It's too easy right now. I have heard it so much, but the problem is, we mentioned something earlier about putting effort into people. I work for a group that in 2 years turned over their entire thing. 6 stores turned over their entire staff by number twice.
Wow.
Because the owner's son got involved, brought in a henchman. He hated 20 car a month people because they just wouldn't do it his way. So they hated anybody that had been there a long time because they wanted to do it their way. In turn, business improved because they threw money into facilities, but they lost millions, which they're too smart to realize what they lost by people.
Well, and you hit it. You said the word their way. It should be our way. That's the problem, is that we don't include our sales staff into developing a process that resonates with everybody. We just mandate it down, and we've always done it this way thinking is always happening. And on a larger scale, it's not a feeling of our, it's almost us versus them. I remember doing an assessment in a store up in the Northwest, and they wanted to go to the one-person model. And when I finished the assessment, I said, "You can't do this." And they said, "Why?" And I go, "Because you have a civil war in your store you're not even aware of. Your salespeople hate the management staff, and they hate this one particular manager mostly, and it'll never fly. And you weren't even aware of it, and they weren't aware of it. And when I touched base with them a year later, they had addressed it because they realized we didn't even know what was going on in our house. They had these siphons, these silos of things, and that's another issue that's affecting turnover. There's not a feeling of all of us together."
Well, I have to tell you, hence came that lovely TV show, which initially was really cool, then it became overproduced, Undercover Boss. And the motivation was tremendous. Then afterwards, let's buy this poor guy a house. All right, now it starts to get a little bit crazy. But yeah, we do live in our own, even there are silos.
Yeah, Jeff, I'd like to just jump in for a second here. The number one thing that we see in this business is the unconscious incompetence. You don't know that you don't know, so if you don't know, you can't change it. It's very simple. As Doug said, going into a dealer, they didn't know that they had a problem in-house and they had a civil war going on that they were completely unaware of. Now, mostly when we look at these dealerships right now, because of the instant gratification model that we operate on, they look at the low-hanging fruit. They don't look at what is out there, what they can grab, how they can retain. As Larry and many of us have mentioned, the retention model of repeat and referral business is in the 70 to 90% conversion rate, and we don't attack it, and that is so wrong.
We don't need to, Peter. We don't need to go to attack that, because you can sit in the showroom, somebody comes in, you have an XYZ B package available, and you tell them, and he had called me the other day with a friend of his, and he and I haven't called him yet, so I apologize, was going to buy an Outlander plug-in hybrid. And he got pissed off because the salesman said you have to buy a $4,000 ceramic coating.
Mhm.
didn't buy it. Yet, which I didn't tell you, Ian, I went online to see what I could find, and literally on the auction, the same car, new but now used, was $5,000 more at the auction and got sold.
Yep.
To a dealer, like to a Mitsui dealer, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, I mean that is
That's the problem.
a friend of mine
Oh,
called
yeah,
me and he wanted to buy a car. Yeah.
But Jeff, you brought up that right now you don't have to be that skilled, but this turnover issue has been rampant for decades. So even though current conditions are what they are, it's still the issue. This still exists regardless of market. So I mean, we still have to. It has to be addressed. There has to be a solution to it, and I think that's the next question. So what do we do? Because we can't keep churning through people, especially now with the generation that's coming in now is not going to fall for the old stuff. They're gonna
So
have
we need to relate to them on their terms. Because when I got into the business, I bet you a lot of you did, it was real simple. Where can I go to make the most money? That was the overriding thing. We don't want to be buddies with our boss. We didn't need to go on a picnic. But we've gotten a lot more touchy-feely as a society. So rather than bemoan it, let's dial into it, right? If you're a good driver, you know you steer into the skid. Which if you steer the other way, you completely lose control of your car.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine. I talked to a buddy of mine last week at CDK, and they're looking to scale up as they change with new management. Ironically, his old CEO came back, and he said, "Yeah, with millennials and Gen Z, they have to have a fund to fund things like work-life balance and whatever motivates that generation." And I highly doubt any dealership is even looking at that. They're just going, "What do you mean you don't want to work for more money?"
Well, yeah, exactly. And I'll tell you this, that when I was in college in the 80s, and granted, I was born and raised in Boulder, Colorado, so I can spew utopia all day long and, and do all that. But I was introduced to the concept of psychic income and that it was much more valuable to a lot of people than strictly economic income. If you like where you work, then the economics of it aren't necessarily as important. I don't think dealerships have grasped that. They simply focus on the economic aspect of it, and I think that's short-sighted.
Well, here's based on those statements, the three things that I see as being a priority based in the new economy of the dealership is one, onboarding our staff properly. We at best right now we orientate them. There's your desk, there's the bathroom, and get going. The second thing is designing a pay plan that incentivizes the proper way of doing business. And third is develop a scheduling system that allows for that work-life balance that is not a bell-to-bell 6 days a week. And if you don't show up, you don't have a job. We have to understand that we're going to bring in people that might sell 6 cars a month, but their 6 cars a month might be the gross profit potential of the guy that sells 15 cars a month. So it's a balance right across the board. And I think Larry would agree with all that.
Well, also,
you're right. One sec, Pete. Yeah. What I encourage dealers to think about is if you have enough staff, give one Saturday off a month each, guys. Because again, more than ever in retail, people's lifestyles, their work-life balance is really important. When I advertise for techs, I always ask them, is it okay if I put 4-day work week available? Because these things that maybe weren't even a thought 20 years ago are now urgent.
Well, yeah, I mean,
in fact,
we talked.
A dealer group in Colorado
Yep.
that when COVID hit, we were a 6-day-a-week state. When COVID hit, they went down to 5 days. They never went back. There's still only a 5-day-a-week group, other than one brand where the manufacturer said, no, you got to open a 6-day. And their employees absolutely love it. And Peter, I would take it one step further based on what you said. Yes, have a robust onboarding program, but then have the ability to coach individually. Because what tends to happen is we onboard them, we train them, we throw them, and then we don't really follow up with them other than looking at their numbers. We need to develop them And from a compensation standpoint, and this was brought up a couple weeks ago on LinkedIn, why don't we develop a pay plan that rewards managers with lowering turnover? Because the only way they're going to lower turnover is develop their people, and have the have the ability to incentivize and force the change that way. I mean, if pay plans dictate behavior, then let's dictate it that way.
You mean the WWF belt doesn't motivate?
No.
Pizza Fridays?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because I actually had the benefit of taking a class as an elective as part of my MBA, and we actually had an Olympic coach come in who's in his 80s, and he's coached multiple Olympic teams, and he happened to be coaching the synchronized swimming team for Canada, and all the women on the team were complaining that they were training him too hard. So he said to him, okay, well, how many people do you know with a gold medal on their mantelpiece? And they said, well, not very many. He goes, yeah, so you'd appreciate that, you probably have to do some things that maybe other people don't do in their day-to-day training regimen. But to your point, Doug, if you've ever been to Montreal never opens on weekends for car sales and has some of the highest volume for a lot of metropolitan areas because the people in that market are conditioned that you can't buy a car on weekends. Like it just doesn't happen.
Off of work to go buy a car.
Yeah. So it can be done. And if you look in the Philippines or other countries in Asia, in a lot of those countries, they take the car to the customer because the customer doesn't go to dealerships. That's just not in the culture. So that's another whole thing. But the other thing that I would say for management is say, listen, as I'm recruiting those millennials or Gen Zs or even Gen Xers maybe, ask the question, what's more important to you, having a day off or a different commission structure or maybe something else? I mean, what motivates people is not only generational, it changes by individual. So you can customize that based on what motivates your staff because at the end of the day, you're all on the same team, right?
Right. Well, here's what I'm going to jump in here and hit you guys with another part of this. Other than NADA, how many general manager training programs are there out there?
2, 3?
Are there really? I don't know of any. The NADA,
I know a couple.
of course, I took NADA. Not 1 minute that I can remember, and it was a few years ago, was spent on staff. Not 1 minute was spent on how do you develop your people. Not 1 minute was spent on retaining your staff for the people you spent all this time on. Then we get how many GSM or director training courses are there? There's none because they took the person that had the best selling team that may have been the one that was the best closer. How many sales manager training programs there are? We train salespeople. Larry's, I heard Larry's buying a Pagani here that nobody will ever see just because, well, my God, I don't know if the seat goes up far enough. Just kidding. But Larry's earning good money training people. But what ends up happening is, and he is doing repeat referral business because he keeps rehiring for people that he just hired for because the same people that learned their way. So the challenge is, and this is where we're coming into the how section of it. How do we get dealerships, mindsets, away from this disposable, and I'll go variable because the other side, most of them don't even understand. How do we get them away from this?
Well,
the first thing we have to do is make them understand what a problem it is and that they have to seek it out. I was contracted by a dealership group in New York many years ago, and I actually wrote a train-the-trainer program that I use, dealers wanted or needed. And the first page, I showed 4 managers getting into a car to go to a meeting, and the car has a flat tire. And one manager says to the other, it's only 52 miles on the highway, we can make it. Now, of course, that's ridiculous. Nobody would get into a car with a flat tire and go 50 miles an hour, but they do it all the time with their salespeople. They complain about it, but they don't try to find a way to empathize and make the people better. So, unless you acknowledge a problem and understand what the problem is, how the heck can you fix it?
I think that this is where statistics don't lie, and I don't know what the source would be, but I would think that someone would have the wherewithal to show the net profitability of a store with low turnover versus that with high turnover. Same brand, even say marketplace if possible. I think that that would be eye-opening. I don't think that there's enough publicizing of that. I also don't think, and to your point, Jeff, you have 20 groups for dealers. Why don't they have 20 groups for GMs? Why don't they have regional GSM 20 groups? We used to host a regional F&I 20 group, just getting F&I managers in the room and just letting them share ideas. And it was incredibly valuable. I don't know why they don't do things like that so that those that are successful can share the wisdom with those that aren't.
Well, think about it too. They have a 20 group the dealer principals go to, and some good ones bring a manager.
Yeah.
It's hit and miss, and it's more like, come on, we're going to Boca Raton. Come with me and take a couple of days because I like you.
Right.
It's a heck of an idea, but the problem is the dealer level. Many of them are still disconnected. They don't know what's going on.
Right.
But the good ones, to be honest.
Here's something. Richard Branson said, clients don't come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your clients. That goes to the measurement of global dealership experience. And this is something, again, back that Doug and I promote that is very important moving forward in this new future of the automotive retailing world, that we have to change our mindsets. Our mindsets are what is causing the turnover. We don't look at things as a business. Again, we're back to the 30-day cyclical issue of a car lot. If we looked at NADA, like we've been talking about, NADA, if you look up their onboarding for tech in a dealership, it is a 1-year program to get onboarded properly as a tech in a dealership per NADA standards. Why do we not have the same for sales? Why can't we dispose?
Well, part of it's that, Peter, but also, I mean, we've had multiple shows about HR and also on the retention side. Part of it is also we're ignoring the bigger part of the room, which is half the potential staff members happen to be women. There's even less flexibility for women in auto, and that's why their retention numbers are so low. So that's why it's so important not only to have onboarding, but to ask questions. You want to attract women to your dealership. We've had many dealers ask that question, women to service writers or techs. I mean, you've got to ask that question. Why are you ignoring that 50% or plus of the population that could be great employees if you actually made it comfortable for them or acceptable for them to work for you, right?
It's interesting to me, and maybe I'm naive, and you guys would certainly would be able to comment on this more than I, but I don't understand why this isn't one of the key issues that the NADA focuses on behalf of dealers. I mean, you hear it all the time that they can't hire technicians. Hiring has always been a problem. Turnover's always been a problem, but I don't see any focused effort on here's what the solutions are, here's what best practices are, here's what this industry can provide. I don't understand why the NADA or state groups don't pay more attention to this unless it's just not fruitful for them. I mean, I would love to hear what your guys' thought is on this because maybe I'm just naive.
Larry, maybe you could speak to that. I mean, we've done multiple shows on retention and human resources over many years. Unfortunately, some of our least attended shows. We've done many, but Larry could speak to that because I'm sure he talks to dealers all the time. Why isn't NADA, doing more?
Because as an industry and really as a planet, we're very short-sighted in terms of looking about what's right in front of us. And don't forget, we have the world's strongest business model. People want to drive cars. They really don't. I mean, I know the younger generation doesn't care if they have a car, a lot of them, and they just rather jump in a ride share or an Uber. But people come in, it's like having a McDonald's. People are hungry and you're next to a high school. But it's so sad because every statistic points to the fact that it costs a fortune to replace these people. You lose things. And going back, I was listening to what Doug said earlier. Doug, there actually are, maybe there's not a dramatic study of what happens to the dealers to keep them, But all the really successful salespeople dug in one spot. I worked at one dealership and wound up owning it. I'm not comparing myself with it. Look at what Joe Girard, he didn't go to 100 different dealerships. Look at Ali Rita, the guy with Damien Boudreaux. They get into a place, they dig in. Because what always happens is, it's the egomania of the salesperson. I'm leaving, I'm taking my crew with me. Once in a while, somebody will follow you. But what usually happens is they come in and say, "Where's John?" "Oh, John left. Gosh, that's a shame. He was really a nice guy, but you can help me." So it's clear. Really successful people find something that works. They stick with it. They dig in. Jumping around, acting like grass is always going to be greener doesn't make sense. But I honestly think that's a part of society, right? I mean, we just don't think of in terms of loyalty, whether it's sports, music, history. We don't look at things and feel the same tie-in that we do, or we used to, and that management doesn't have the right emphasis. I heard a couple of you say onboarding. The hell with onboarding. How about the training that comes after the onboarding? Because what they usually get told about when they sign up is not what they get when they're there. Doug, everybody, I get it all the time. Larry, I'm really disillusioned. Your class was great. I was excited to join, and it's just kind of blah now. They don't make me feel a part of it. So I think if you're not putting the right emphasis on it, if it's not a priority, and if the management doesn't understand how important each one of these people are, as a manager, you're making money off these people. Why wouldn't you want to nurture them?
I agree, Larry. I guess where I'd like to come in, yes, this is the greatest industry in the world. We employ 1 in 5 people, either directly or indirectly, in North America in the car business. We've developed a case of ignorance, and I won't say being rude. I'm talking about not understanding what's going on around us. And in that ignorance, we have failed miserably on the women in automotive. We don't recognize them not just as a workforce, but as a buying force as well. And when we do that, we see the loss of conversions. And because we see loss of conversions, we increase our turnovers. So we're not training, we're not coaching, we're not doing anything to develop our staff. We're just looking and blinders on, and it is 100%. All we're doing is focused on the 30-day.
Wait a minute, Peter, think how much sense what you just said made. They've proven, every damn study proves that women influence 80 to 85% of the buying decisions, and they now buy more than 50% of the cars. Yep. Every woman will tell you they hate going to the car dealership. I mean, how stupid is that? This is like you have a hoagie shop, and everybody that walks in, you go, "You sure you want a hoagie? You look fat." You're discouraging the very essence of your business and of your customer base.
No, you got to ask them if they're vegan first.
Well, there is vegan hoagie. So, gentlemen, I'm going to challenge you now. We have about 10 minutes left. What I would like to do is, after the show's done, is make a post that is a statement from the advisory panel to dealers that says in one paragraph, one short paragraph, that says, and I'm going to type it here too, because I learned how to do 2 things at one screen. It is a short paragraph that says, the Auto Hub Show advisory team says here is how you have to drop your turnover to 30%. Oh my God, so only 30%. What could we come up with? What recommendation? Because frankly, this isn't in the power of a sales manager. And I'm not directing this. This isn't in the power of a GSM, of a GM, of a dealer. This is a mindset. And Peter mentioned Richard Branson. How many pictures of Richard Branson do you see out there on social media in a suit or a tuxedo? Almost none. But what I see is a guy in a tank top, shorts, and flip-flops. And yet he just launched a $1.9 billion cruise ship. And I'll guarantee Richard Branson doesn't know the cruise industry that way. Right? So what's the statement we could do?
Well, if I can take it off, or take it first. I will say that Richard Branson knows people. He knows what people want. And unfortunately, our business, we don't care what people want. We focus on what we want, and that is the wrong mindset moving forward. We have to change our mindset. We have to look at the mindset of development. We in training will attest to a 33% lift. If we add a coaching component, it brings that up to 88% lift in our engagement, in our revenue, in our profitability, our turnover. All the metrics improve when we start investing in our people. When we invest in our people, we're now going to turn around and we're going to see that customer experience lift. We got to stop the buying into people that haven't been in our business, that are trying to get into our business. I know a major manufacturer started with a company that they spent almost $15 million on a customer experience model, and not one single person had worked in a dealership before. Look to the people that are looking to change the business in the industry from the industry, is my answer.
I think, well, we can all pie in the sky and say every dealership should adopt a more customer-centric dealership experience. The vast majority, it's going to fall on deaf ears. So if we're looking for things that they can do, I think one is to what Peter said, coach your people up. Two, I think that the dealerships should have regularly scheduled one-on-ones with their individuals, their subordinates, that are asking them if their world is round, how things are outside of metrics, to make sure we're addressing that. The third one, I think Ian, you touched on. Find out what motivates them and be willing to have multiple types of pay plans based on the motivation of the individual. Some people may be strictly monetarily focused. Great, here's your pay plan. Others may be focused on other things, and be willing to have multiple types of pay plans that can reward what gets them going. And fourth, I think that they need to spend more time developing their managers into leaders and teach them how to develop and keep staff and make that part of their pay plan as well. That would be four things that I would tick off right away as far as recommendations. Although, Larry, with your vast knowledge, you may think that I'm a little, shoot from the hip a little too much.
Not at all. I would boil it down even simpler to what you and Peter just said, which is your greatest asset is in your cars you're building, it's your people. And not only includes your customers, it includes your salespeople. How many times, Doug, have we counseled service people that advisors are salespeople too? It's all about making people want to buy from you, giving them a whip. Here's what's in it for you. An attitude of gratitude. Here's how glad we are that you're spending your money here. Again, treat your people like people. Make them feel important. Make them feel like they're tied in. You don't want to lose them. You're going to always lose a few, but the turnover we have is ridiculous. And again, I'm back to my original points. It's the lack of sincerity, the lack of consideration, the lack of loyalty. Make these people feel part of the team. Right, we've all heard it. The reason, the top reason for most people leaving is that they have lost. They're not comfortable with the way they're dictated to or the way they're spoken to.
Very interesting, Larry. You just said something that tweaks something in my mind. When a dealership gets sold, the day of the takeover, what's the first thing that happens?
30% loss.
Yeah. One of Peter's favorite people, I believe, I could be wrong because he never mentioned them by name, advertised that they bought a few stores in a new market. And they're advertising for general managers and bring them out. And you could make up $1 billion. What happened to the ones that were in the stores? Right. It wasn't one store where you bought it out and the owner and the owner's kids, they left because you know what, we're gonna go to Miami. No, it's a bunch of stores, so that there was no value in any of the people there. And this comment, Larry, was phenomenal because They bought it. Doug, you started on it with not your building, not your blue sky, which is lovely. Your goodwill is phenomenal. Where did your goodwill come from? Goodwill came from your people.
Well,
And the first thing to go isn't the old furniture.
well, just look at the example Warren Buffett sets. He buys companies. Some of them, obviously, he gets at a value, but in most cases, he leaves the management in place. Why? Because he lets them build that business, and it's clearly a track record of success. I'm sure there's examples where it doesn't work, but for the most part, he just acquires the company and lets them run it.
And I think, Larry, you hit on something that I think would be valuable as well. You said, make them feel like they're part of the team, but the team is the entirety of the dealership, not just the variable ops department. And if we can tie all the departments together, and Peter and I have talked about this, and devise an incentive plan that rewards retention long term, that says, hey, every time you reach out to that customer and lob an email just saying, how are things going, you'll be rewarded for it. And every time they come back in for an oil change, you'll be rewarded for it. So that everybody's working together. Now as a team, we're accomplishing a greater good. Maybe now I'm less likely to want to leave because I'm not going to get that at store X across the street. I'm just in that silo of sales.
No, it's because of ESPN and the oversaturation of media. All we hear about in the States is Bill Belichick. And I hold forth, and I've always held forth, that in his best day on earth, he couldn't do what Vince Lombardi did. And I always predicted, let's see what he does without Brady. Lombardi took a team, look it up, it was 110-1. Won 5 out of 6 championships, lost once to my Philadelphia Eagles. When he started, it was almost a mutiny because he started working these guys like crazed beasts, kill them. But then they started to see the methods. It was madness. He explained, I want you to be in better shape than the other teams because at the end of the game, it'll pay off. So he worked them harder, but he did it with an explanation, not the old because I said so. He showed them what the results would be and then delivered the results. That's real management. Here's what I want you to do. Here's why I want you to do it. And here's what will happen if you get it done.
I think that same model works here in Colorado with Deion Sanders and our Bucks because we were horrible last year and he's changing the culture. So hopefully that bleeds over.
I'm gonna say development of culture is through loyalty, transparency, and trust. If we can incite that into our industry, into our dealerships, we will see that turnover and reduce the retention of both customers and staff increase.
And I think,
Jeff, can I just add one other thing? All these theories are absolutely beautiful. I almost feel like singing Kumbaya, but I just want to be on record that I encourage dealers to continue their sloppily horrible methods. Not turning you for people. It's Larry Feldman, Career Changers USA. Here I am. Treat your people horrible. My bank account appreciates it.
I think, Jeff, the last thing I would say, Jeff, on your list is, and this should garner a great deal of attention from the national and state organizations. I mean, when I saw a survey that said 5 times as many dealers were concerned about addressing the customer experience in the store as they were managing inventory for profitability, to me, this is a concern of dealers, but they're not getting the support. They're not getting it from a national level. I think that would be the last thing is that everybody, we all need to pull in the same direction on this. We've got to change this.
Yeah. Well, you know something I have to tell you. As the saying goes, the time is nigh, or whatever it is. And while things are good is when you fix things. It's not when things are bad and you're panicking, which makes a lot of secondary advisors very, very wealthy. Because you get somebody in to fix my team, not you fix your team. And I'm going to, before I leave it to Ian to close, guys, thank you so much.
Yep.
And this was fun. We're going to do it again, obviously, next month with a different topic. I'm going to work on formulating, Ian and I will work together on formulating the statement for the group. But I'm going to leave you with this. I am a fan of the show on Apple TV about the soccer coach that came from like rural or some small college coach in
Ted Lasso.
American football. And this this year's episode talks about the Richmond Greyhounds that have moved up to the Premier League. And they got the greatest player in the history of soccer. And of course, it's a Messi-like person. And this person came in and he was the legend. And of course, they built him up with the ermine cakes and everything. And they won 4 in a row. And then they lost. Then they lost terribly, and the guy retired. And the point is, it ain't about the one guy, which in our case, of course, is about, unfortunately, the person at the very, very top.
Right.
Our business is the one industry that nobody knows about the superstar. You know about the realtor superstar. You know about the hockey, the baseball. Who hasn't just signed for, my God, $100 million a year, just something stupid, doesn't win games. It's the whole team. So I think, guys, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, Moneyball proved that. I mean, that Moneyball model was like, let's look at how we can make a team work on a limited budget and get the results. I mean, I think the same is true with the dealership. It's a team environment. Are you coaching your people? If you need a great coaching tool, I have one from that course I took. I'm happy to provide it. You need to be all the time making your team that much better, but more importantly, working as a team, because it doesn't work as 2 or 3 guys or gals selling cars. You have a business there, but more importantly, you have customers. When you look at people, as Larry mentioned, that have been at a dealership for a long time and have been very successful, and I'll use Dylan Fouy in Canada as another example of that. He works at a Honda store. He's top Honda salesman in the country. I think he sells around 100 cars a month. He didn't do that by accident, but more importantly, it took time. But he's built a team by himself on his side of the store. But why aren't you taking that overarching principle and applying it to the rest of the store? And I asked him this question when I interviewed him a couple of years ago. Why aren't the other salesmen working in the store asking how you did it? And he was like, I don't know, they're intimidated. But why isn't management duplicating that effort? Why are they not taking the learnings from one side and applying it to the whole store? I mean, he doubled the volume of the store as one individual. Like, why are you not applying that to the rest? And he's not in a big town. He's in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is by no means Detroit. And he sells almost as many cars as Rita. And he's in a small town selling Hondas. So, it's possible. But if you're not looking for the answers and you're not working to improve, you're never going to get there. But that's all for me. Thanks for appearing on the show. Looking forward to next month's. And really appreciate all the input and thoughts. And, of course, we'd love to see dealers pay more attention to retention. We've been harping on this for many years, and I think it's a very important part of the business. And that's it for me. Any final thoughts?
Well, just thank you very much for building the show up as it is. I think the format is fantastic, and I enjoy the intellect of everyone on.
Yeah, no, agreed. No, this is good, and maybe one show at a time we can change this industry and save it from itself.
Absolutely, and we didn't even pay for that endorsement. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Joel. Yeah,
I think we have to work on doing an NADA presentation with this group.
Absolutely.
That's what we got to work on.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Have a great week and have a great month then.
Take care.
All right, see you guys.
Oh la la. What?
Thanks for joining us. It was a great show, and follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel.